Given this shared experience, we had an agreement in principle to move both bills together on suspension. Yet, without any further discussion, Democrats changed their minds, claiming suddenly that they had issues with H.R. 8517, but then they refused to identify what those issues were. While I look forward to still supporting this piece of legislation before us today, I'm at a loss for words as to why the majority on House administration continues to make things more difficult and partisan than they need to be. Fortunately, it's not too late to do the right thing, as Mr. Stile has offered an amendment to include the confirmation of Congressional Observer Access Act. I urge members of this committee to make Mr. Stiles' amendment in order and move both bills together, as we had originally agreed to do in a bipartisan way. It's the right thing to do for the American people as we work to advance common sense election integrity measures that would help restore faith in our elections. I yield back.
All right, Mr. Davis, thank you very much for your testimony. But let me just ask you, Mr. Davis, you have no substantive objection to the PAVA Program Inclusion Act. Is that right?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Then, Mr. Butterfield, am I correct in understanding that everybody supports it?
That's my understanding, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the ranking member, Mr. Davis, for going on the record today saying that they do not oppose this legislation. It is good legislation. It passed by unanimous consent in the Senate, and it's a very common sense piece of legislation. I also appreciate the gentleman's friendship. He and I both are leaving at the end of this Congress. We have worked very congenially together. We have worked in a bipartisan way when we could, and I just want to publicly thank Mr. Davis for his role on this committee and all the work that he's done. It is true that this is an amendment, and I would say that adding this amendment to the legislation does not strengthen the legislation. It detracts from it, and so I would oppose the amendment, Mr. Chairman. And I will also conclude by saying that we've never said that we would ever move these two pieces of legislation together. Thank you. I yield back.
Okay, so forgive me, Mr. Butterfield, because I'm new to this legislation, but as I understand it, we basically have a non-controversial bill that everyone supports that will vindicate voting rights. And it has
no cost associated with it.
There's no cost associated with it. Yeah. As I understand it, it's not on the consent calendar. It's not on the suspension calendar. Right. Just because it was not paired with another bill.
That's right.
Is that right?
That's right. There was objection to it because it was not paired. So we had to come to this committee to get permission to go forward.
Okay. So, okay. Well, I think I understand the picture. Let's see if anyone, Mr. Cole, do you have any questions or thoughts on it?
Well, first of all, maybe we didn't pair it so we could bring you up here so we could praise you, Mr. Butterfield. And,
thank you, Mr. Cole.
I've offered lavish praise to my friend, Mr. Davis. Probably have the opportunity to do it again because he's a frequent visitor to our committee, and always good to have him here. But I just want to say for the record how much I regret your decision to retire. I certainly respect it. But you've been a wonderful member, and I think your district and your state have every reason to be proud of you. I've enjoyed working with you, whether we agreed or disagreed on a particular issue. You're always civil. You have that judicial temperament that you carry with you so well, and certainly in this case, it's a piece of legislation I fully support. I also support what my friend Mr. Davis is trying to do as well, and we'll sort that up here on the committee one way or the other. But regardless, the underlying bill here that you're bringing ought to be enacted. I agree very much with your remarks. Look forward to supporting it on the floor. And again, very, very much thank you for your service to this institution and your friendship and, frankly, just the manner in which you handle yourself. So with that, yield back.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cole. And that reminds me, I should say a few words about my friends here. I think I've begun to lament the departure of Mr. Davis before, someone who I will, whose presence I will miss, even when sometimes his presence I regret even then. But we'll miss you a lot, Mr. Davis, and you're a meaningful contributor to this body. And Mr. Butterfield, I don't know if this is the last time we'll get to see you here in the Rules Committee. I don't know, but you have had an extraordinary career here. You've had an extraordinary life. You grew up under harsh conditions of segregation and always looked for the very best in our democracy and always fought for a more perfect union. And your career is a dazzling one that has traversed the different boundaries of our government, judicial, legislative, federal, state, local. And you've got some amazing stories to tell and some amazing battles yet to fight. So we're going to miss you a lot, Mr. Butterfield, and thank you for appearing. And with that, I'll come to my friend, Mr. Perlmutter, who's never at a loss for words himself. So.
There, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't have any questions about the bill. I think the country and the Congress will miss Mr. Butterfield very much. Not so sure about my friend, Mr. Davis, but I definitely believe both of these gentlemen have been good friends, good advisors in a lot of different ways. And the country will be a little worse off with the two of you, checking out greener pastures. And with that, I'll yield back to the chair.
Thank you.
All right. Dr. Burgess, to you.
Thank you, and likewise, I have no questions on the presentations of our witnesses, but I do have to say both to Mr. Butterfield and to Mr. Davis, we will indeed miss your service in the future. Mr. Butterfield, by virtue of winning a special election, joined the freshman class that Mr. Cole and I were a portion of, and Mr. Butterfield has served on the committee with me on energy and commerce, and always has thoughtful things to add. And Rodney, is that a Raiders patch on your blazer?
I was hoping, one of the last few times I get an opportunity to trigger Mr. Perlmutter. I know he's a little fragile, of course, and that was my goal.
So, yeah, that's, there are some things about Rodney I'm going to miss, and there are a lot of things I'm not.
Reclaiming my time. I just want to say, Mr. Davis, thanks again for being here at the Rules Committee. You always add so much with your presence and your testimony, and we always appreciate it. And I'll yield back to the chairman.
Thank you, Dr. Burgess. Now I'll come to the distinguished gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Scanlon.
Thank you. I don't think I have any questions. I'm very happy to support the legislation and share the frustration of others that this should have been a suspension bill. But certainly it's, it fixes a technical glitch in the statute that left out two parts of the country. And I look forward to it going to the floor. So thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, Ms. Scanlon. Mr. Reschenthaler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member Davis, I'm just curious. I heard, I can't recall who said it, but it was stated that Mr. Stiles' amendment would detract from the legislation. Do you agree with that? And would you like to expand on that?
No, Mr. Reschenthaler, and I appreciate you giving me a chance to respond. I noticed even some frustration from members of the majority that this very good PAVA correction bill is not on suspension. And I have to disagree with my good friend and colleague, Mr. Butterfield, who I have tremendously enjoyed serving with. The northwest end of the ground floor of Rayburn is going to be different with both he and I, who are neighbors, leaving. So anybody who's looking for new office space, come take a look at it. They're two pretty good spots. But in the end, this bill would have strengthened the PAVA corrections. We all want equal access to election observers. I mean, it's the reason why we have the official House administration run election observer program. It's bipartisan. Republicans don't get to just send observers. The Democrats do the exact same thing. And what it does is it helps to ensure that our citizens have faith in our elections, knowing that well-trained staff members go out to these close elections and they observe. They don't interject, they observe. It's a longstanding program that we've utilized on House administration on our side tremendously over the last couple of election cycles. I frankly don't understand why the majority didn't pair this as a suspension bill. I mean, they're related. And the sheer fact that we are clarifying something that many election administrators have told me time and time again when I travel to see them that needs to be clarified, this would have strengthened the PAVA bill that's in front of us. And this is one of those times, I'll be honest with you, Mr. Reschenthaler, and also Chairman Raskin, I don't know why the majority decided to change what our staff had agreed to at the last minute. I'm not trying to take it personally. I'm not trying to take it politically, but this process would have been so much easier if they would have just paired it up with this excellent piece of legislation. But you and the Rules Committee have the chance to go look at that amendment. We're not asking for anything nefarious. We're only doing what election administrators actually asked us to do. And we thought we were doing the right thing in a bipartisan way. But let me just say, unfortunately, I haven't been surprised. This is a majority-driven institution. I know that I'm not sitting here at Rules unless the majority decides that we're here at Rules. The majority could have just as easily decided to tell us what concerns they have with a very innocuous bill. And then we could have corrected it and we could have put it on the suspension calendar. You know what? We would have made sure that we corrected two problems rather than just one.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Reschenthaler. If I could just say this, whatever the merits of the argument that these two bills really belong together as peas in a pod 6 months ago or something, if we were to accept the amendment today, it would send the whole thing back over to the Senate and endanger this legislation. So at this point, I think it would make a very big difference if we were to actually paste this on to the vehicle.
That was the basis for my use of the word detracting from the bill, that it would take it off track, send it back to the Senate, and we won't be able to get it done.
Yeah, so it would take us off track procedurally. Thank you much. Mr. Morelli, I'll come to you.
Yeah, I don't